Chagit Moed. We know the mנהג of Chassidim, which are very machmar on the Indian of Shiruya. To take matzah and dip it into water, make kneidlach, chremzach, all these things, but Chassidim it is given a big no, a big loy. The Sefer HaManugam, the Rebbe writes, Nizorim b'yoyser. They're very, very careful with matzah shiruya. The lachain hamatzah shal hashulchan mechusas. The matzahs are always covered. Shemet tipul alayim tipas mayim. Maybe a drop of water is going to fall on the matzah. And also, maybe a drop of matzah will fall into the soup. Not only that, the Rebbe adds that when we make ma'am achroinam, which appear halacha, you have to wash your fingers and you have to wash your mouth too. Pesach, you don't do that. Because the chimra of Shiruah is so big, and therefore, although we wash ma'am achroinam, but we don't wash our mouth. The Rebbe brings down in Rishimas, Chaveret High, of the Anug of the Friedige Rebbe, that the Friedige Rebbe, always when he ate, all the matzahs were covered, and he ate mamash a drop of soup. He didn't mamash really eat soup. Also, he brings down of the Rebbe Shmuel Eiden that the Rebbe Shmuel Eiden did not want to eat with a fork, because in the fork it could be a piece of matzah could stay there, and it will make problems. So he only ate with a spoon, and after every spoon he ate, he wiped it. Mamash azoi. And he never took into his mouth any liquid when he had matzah, except of wine. Yain is hotter Michael gewesen, as we're going to see, like my pirates. Wine, he was Michael, but he didn't drink even in his mouth. Nothing. So we see gewaltige Sach, the chumra of not eating anything which matzah shouldn't touch the water or any liquid. The Rebbe, there's a story of the Rebbe. The Rebbe used to wipe constantly the mouth with the tissue, and one tissue per wipe. Afterwards, he threw under the table. And a bocher went down, one of the Spitz Chassidim went down and collected the napkins. You know, the Rebbe's a napkin, the Rebbe wiped. And the Rebbe looked at him very biased, very angry in his head. So we see the Indian of Sharia is not just a psachimre belitam. As we're going to see the reasons of it. We're going to see that has a reason. Like the Alter Rebbe writes already, sachshash deraisa. So what is the reason? But let's first start mitzad hadin. If you look at the Gemara Shulchan Aruch, there's no problem at all to take matzah and dip it into your soup. The Gemara tells us. Not only, the Gemara says, "Eili devorim sha'ayim behem bum laichimitz," and look in the Mekoiras Aleph. These are the things which do not come to laichimitz. Ha'ofu v'amavushel, so something which is baked and that is cooked. And Rashi says, what does it mean ofu v'amavushel? Once it's ufi, you could cook it. Ufi, afilim avashloi, it's not a problem. So we're saying Gemara clearly, it's not a problem to eat any matzah. Once it's baked, you could eat it, you could cook it, you could do whatever you want. The Gemara tells us even more that you could take a matzah and soak it in water and be yoytze the mitzvahs aseh deraisa if mechilas matzah. Kemivin has to have the klulam. It should still stay a matzah, a mamoitzi. It can't dissolve, can't become white. All the halachas and erchesbechs and hanem. Aber akaponim it is yoytze the mitzvah for matzah shriya. Mit matzah shriya fil the mitzvahs and mitzvahs aseh deraisa for mechilas matzah. So apia alucha, there is no problem to eat shruya. And therefore, b'pashtas, that's the reason why so many Yidden, other than the Chassidim, and a little bit more, but they have no issue. They make neidl, make chremzlich, and take matzahs and put it in the soup. Because b'pashtas hagemura, it's not a problem. And this is how it passes in Shulchan Aruch. Shulchan Aruch simatuf samach aleph, siv zayin, zuk de mechaber, yoytz udim nachivus matzah shri b'paisach. It's not a problem. You can eat matzah shri. Strictly alocha. What is the reason? Where does it start the problem that we start to be machmar and so much? Now we see in the Achroinam a couple of reasons, which not every reason is the same. what is also in one reason will be mutter in the second reason. And what's also in the second reason is mutter in the first reason. But let's go through the reasons and we'll go from there. The Gemara says in Mesechtes Pesuchim, Daf Mem Amud Beis, Rav Pupa, Shurelai lebordike, de by Rav Gelise, lemimche gedar bechasisa. Rav Pupa gave a heter, a psak, for the bakers of the Bayerish Gelise. The Bayerish Gelise was, so to speak, the governor. Baklalis rule, they had like there's no malachim anymore, but there was the Rosh Gelise who were Malchus Beis Dubit. They were very wealthy, they had avodim, and Rav Pupa said that they could make chasisa, the ketayre bechasisa. Ruva said, Ike de shure, geheim milse, bedichte de schriche avde? Is there anybody who's going to give a psak that you could give a head of such a thing, a place where there is avodim? What's avodim? They're mazalzel mitzvahs. So therefore, how could you be mad of such a thing? And the Gemara zog, Ike de omre, Rova gifa made it. That means Rova, be'etzam, said you cannot do that but where there is avodim. But Rova himself, in his house, he did it. He had no issue to do it. Because the problem is only where there is avodim, then there's the zalzel. So from this, the Mamar Matcha, the famous Mamar Matcha, which is brought down in the older Poiskim, Bechral Mamar Matcha, the famous Poisik in Halacha, the Mamar Matcha brings down, from this Gemara we see that basically, b'mekoymes, where there's avodim, you cannot give a heter to, they should make chasisa. Now, what is it chasisa, kedar b'chasisa? It's a machlokes rishonim. What it is. But according to some rishonim, K'daira b'chasisa is, and this is the way how the Rif in the Ritzgayis gives the time. What does it mean K'daira b'chasisa? There's two. Well, some Rishonim say K'daira b'chasisa means if you want to make strong the pot, you cook inside food, and it's a machazik. It makes the pot should be fine. Other pshat is in the Rif, and the Ritzgayis give a pshat is that to take matzah, baked matzah, and you make it matzah meal, you grind it, and you make it kneidlich. That's all the Rif and the Rizgai. What this is what it means. So akaponim, so we see is the Mamot from over here we see that the Mamukim is achshash kilkel by avodim. So therefore he's also, and this is also the Bias of Engel writes in this sefer. He brings this when he talks about the Sigi of Pesuchim over here. He says Mikan we have a makor for the Nahagim not to eat matzah shiruya b'Pesach. Because Rova is makpat, a place, they shouldn't do matzah shiru, a place where there is avodim. And he says, the avodim in the house of Bayerish Gelisa were anytime as a big tzaddikim tamidichom as we. And if we don't know aset kolshkin, we should aset. And this is the Yosef Engel. Today Gemur is the raya that we have an issue of shiru in Pesach. Now the Torah brings down this Rif. And the Torah says, "V'chain uvi adoini harosh," says be'etzam as miter matzafia. But it says, "Begemura ka'omar dafila matzafia oser when there's avodim." So basically, the Torah brings down that b'mukim there's avodim. It is a problem to make matzah shiruim. We'll see what is the problem. This is the sort. The Torah brings down the Rif according to the Rif. And according to the Gemara, how the Rif learns Pshat, what does it mean? K'tayre b'chasisa. And how we pasken, that is a problem. And that's why you look in the Shulchan Aruch, the Shlomo Klieger, Tuf Samach Gimel, brings the Shlomo Chach B'Shlomo, brings over there right away. After he brings down the Tur, he says, from this Tur, we see clearly, Amakar, Lenahagem, to be Aser, to eat Shloi Le'echel Kneidlich. From over here we have the raya, why not to eat kneidlich? It doesn't make sense why was the Iser. According to what we see, the Torah brings down the Rif. We have to be chosh l'dasator, and therefore it's also. So we have a smach from Shas in Poiskim that we should not eat matzah shiruya. We see the Ravon, one of the early Rishonim, he writes like this: a matzah for you, matzah which is baked, which you cooked it, and you made a matzah which is called shalkik, or you made for the children, you used to make ferfel. He calls it farfel. Zukt mitzad alucha, eine muda leichimet. It's not a problem. Vayesh, zukt very interesting. There are some people, the first night they didn't want to do it, because this is what they saw, but that's not the reason. They thought the reason is because they shouldn't get chumat, but that's not the reason, because if yes, why first night yes, and why the second night not? We're not machmer. The reason is only because we should have the ta'am matzah, we don't wait, you should lose the ta'am matzah, so therefore the first night we are machmer. Or other nights they're not machmer because they're not machmer of shriya. But then he adds on and finishes, Emiyu eine toiv lasas fervel, you should not make fervel, that means grinded matzah, because shelo yasi gami kemach. So now we see already what is the problem when there's avodah. They should make gami kemach. That means that the Shoin, and this is the same thing is the Ravia, which is a grandson of the Ravon, right? The same thing. He brings down Yesha Machmiran, the Ar Machmirim not to make fervel for the children in Pesach. The Loilaise Lemita, you shouldn't make from regular flour. V'chimra Shabbat Nefesh, V'chimra Shabbat Nefesh. It's a little bit, this reason is a little bit as kidneys. One of the reasons, there's a reason, we asked kidneys. The Ashkenazim do not eat kidneys. There's a lot of reasons the kidneys. One reason is because you could find, in the kidneys, you could find wheat. That's Pashat HaMatzias. By the way, today, I have a friend which is in the Kashrus line, sent me a small clip of a Svardisher, which they eat beans, and he checked it 5 times, and he shows how many wheat he found after the 5 times. And he says, he's a Svardisher, he says, Rabbanim, tagidu, eich efshel lahatir et zeh. Poshet, that was, Poshet, it's interesting that it's a serious concern. But that's one of the reasons. Why do you not eat this? Because it has grain inside. But there's other Rishonim said we answer kidneys not because of that, because you could make flour of it. And since you can make flour of it, and therefore, but kimatoitz is on flour, and that's one of the reasons that it is a voice and other points come asar potato starch. Yeah? And that's why I grew up in the Pupakilla, there's no such thing as potato starch, because it is the same as flour. If somebody's going to make with flour, if somebody's making potato starch, people will not know, and therefore magasit. So the same reason as kidneys, the same reason is also over here by Matzah Sharia. If you're going to grind it, people will not know, and will think it's regular flour. Therefore, magasit. He says there are some people who machmer b'lai rishon because they're afraid of chashash chimas. There's no such thing as chashash chimas because it's cooked. It's only why do the machmer the first night because they want to have the taste of the what? No, he means matzah. Steady in matzah, yeah. But
because it's very different. The chashash of a mixture of wheat in, say, rice or something like that, I understand. But to say, let's go further and say anything that looks like flour.
Okay, so now he has a good point. Looks like flour. So now I'm going to bring down a knesset agdoila, which the Mugrabrum brings down. A knesset agdoila writes like this: by us in Kishta, where the place where he lived, they asked to make matzah meal. They asked to make matzah meal. Why? He tells a story. There was a shayni damoirarua Talmud Chocham, which his wife made flounder fish, whatever, a fish, and made fish fried in a pot. And he writes, and as the minhag is to, when you fry a fish, you would put flour on top. It shouldn't stick to the pot. So therefore, what did she do Pesach? She took matzah meal and she made it with matzah meal. The neighbor was in the house and he saw she makes matzah meal a fish. She makes fish with flour. So the next day she bought fish and she took flour and she made also flounder fish. And the husband comes home and says, "My hi." He says, "What do you mean? I was yesterday, but this Talmud Chacham in the house, and I saw his wife doing that. So if she can do, why can I not do it?" The only havdil was she did it with matzah meal, and the Amaratzata did it with the flour. Zukt of them the knesset from then on, we made a iser in kushta that you cannot do this thing. You cannot use matzah meal because if we saw the mishrush came out of chumas, therefore he brings it twice. That's why first, and then later he says Elasis Pachayla Hanigis B'chal Shabbos Eichel Amon. There used to be a minute to make a kigel from, like a gekneit and a kigel. They used to make Eichel Amon, and we stopped it. You cannot do it anymore because we had this chashash, and from there we have this problem of we cannot have a matzah meal in all these things. So this is the point can bring down. There's the issue of making of matzah meal, kneidlich. But if this is the case, what do we aser? We only aser kneidlich. We only aser chremslich. Because this could be, she's used flour, but taking a piece of matzah, and put it in the soup, everybody sees it's a piece of matzah, there shouldn't be a problem. Also gibt es according to this time. Also sagt the Mama Motcha. Zoek the Mama Motcha, what we aser, the Mama Motcha, ieder gedeelte, ze zoekt de gemoere van Chassisa, zoekt de Mama Motcha, the only reason we zich aser is only when it's flour. If it's grinded. If you have a piece of matzah and you dip it in the water, I have no issue. Was er nicht bei Esem Chumma, sag Shash, ist Kimmelite, in meine Megman, and so it passt in Mama Motcha.
Somebody's over, so that's why nobody's believing.
Kiktos as Chazal am gehat avate ki gedolis rule, they saw what's going to happen, and yes, exactly. Fine. This is one reason what we said. You could come to, and again, according to this reason, kneidlich you don't eat, but matzah you could eat when you dip it in water. What? Look, Chazal, the Gedol Yisrael, Rishonim saw things which Pesach do alle meine Chimres. Das ist kein Gesayres like Gesayres. In Pesach macht man 7 Gesayres on top. Yeah. So, it's a Pesach, Chimre the Pesach. Another reason what we have other reason, which is the reason which the Oile Shabbos writes. The Oile Shabbos writes, he has there's a Bach. The Bach says like this, Bal Nefesh, every Bal Nefesh, should bake all the matzahs for Pesach. And this is how we do it today's day. Once upon a time, they used to bake it in Pesach Ochet. Some soifer, such a year like this year, Matzah Shabbos, when it's Erev Pesach, Shabbos Erev Pesach, Matzah Shabbos, he used to start baking matzahs mitzvah. But nowadays, you don't do it. Zukt of them, the Bach, you shouldn't bake. Everything, all the matzahs should be baked before Pesach. Why? What's the reason? He says, because, our Shabbos is Masber, explains it, because there's a big machloikis achroinam. There's a locha, lach balach, gets bottled, it's a bit choice vanir in Pesach. If you have 2 liquids, a chomazdig liquid, not a chomazdig liquid, get mixed together, bit bottle of our Pesach, and it's fine. No choice vanir, doesn't wake up in Pesach. Yuvash wakes up. Wakes up, that means all the way it's in this bottle when it's Pesach, it wakes up when it comes Pesach. What is flour? Is flour lach balach? It's a liquid, or flour is a solid? Machloikes Pascham. Menemen bechlal in Yeridai in Hilchas Isveheter. We take flour is lach balach. Take lach balach. It's lach balach. It's considered a liquid because it mixed together. The concept is because lach mixes, flour mixes together. But it's not push machloikes achroinam. Machloikes. Zug the bach b'bayil. We have a problem if it is lach balach or it's yuvish b'yuvish according to machloikes. So therefore, if you are going to have epes chumatz in the matzahs and you're going to bake it, and it's not, and it's choiz vanir, you have a problem. Zukt of them the Oile Shabbos from. No, if you have any, it will be any flour stayed in the matzah, then you're going to cook it, you're going to bake it, and then it's going to choiz vanir. It's to machshash fin chumatz. Now the Mugavruam fights doesn't disagree with the Bach, but after we can. Zug the Oile Shabbos, the Mugavruam has right, the Bach has right because of the chashash. The Prima Gudam also went out to the Mugavruam goes out against the Oile Shabbos as usual, and then the Prima Gudam neemt zich for the Oile Shabbos. So b'mayla hamen is anu chashash. What is the chashash? We are afraid that in the matzah there is anything which is not 100% baked. In the matzah, I'm not talking about outside of the matzah. In the matzah, something is not baked good. Therefore, once it comes Pesach, and you put it in the soup, there is flour, and it can be a chumatz, and then, no problem. According to this, there is shentaka osar alla zachen. Is ocht usa the kneidlich ocht usa matzah, because we are afraid in the matzah something is not baked well inside in the matzah, and therefore you put it in the soup, then it can become a problem. This is the Oile Shabbos as chashash. Again, there's matzah which is inside, in the matzah is not fully baked. By the way, when I was a child, there was 1 year that, I don't know what happened, but in one of the bakeries, big bakeries, the biggest matzah bakery, had a problem that the meal did not grind well the chita and stayed pieces. Pesach, you took it, you opened it up, you saw inside Weißlach. Sie gewinnen überkehren nicht, mit gelaufen zu Rabunam, sie gewarfen matzahs on the outside of the floor, sie gewinnen als achshash, it wasn't music. And ob sie hatten sich wheat, the inside of the wheat is not necessarily baked. In Mamaila, es ist nicht ungefragt als Schale, aber what? Against what?
It's not baked, it's chalutz.
If it's not baked, it's flour. You put it in the soup.
Okay, so you put it in soup.
Yeah, ich verstehe, aber es ist ein Problem. So I can put them, das ist der Chash von der Oile Stumme, das ist der Chash auch in der Shara Tshiva, der macht Shekel. They bring the Chash, the flour inside might not be fully baked, might be a piece of flour, which then comes to a gewaltige problem. That's the second reason why we ask a shruya. Now comes the Alter Rebbe, comes with a different reason. And this I quoted over there. The quote was the Alter Rebbe's ganze Tshiva. The Alter Rebbe comes with a different, and there's a big difference of these two. And you're going to see why the Alter Rebbe changes the Chash. He went away from the Chash from the Shara Tshiva, and from the Machzah Shekel, Oile Stumit, and he went a new Chash. And therefore, in this Chash, according to the Alter Rebbe, which basically, according to them, there's also Chash Yisad Reise. According to the first time, there's no Chash Yisad Reise. It's a Chash, and maybe people will come to, but according to the Machzah Shekel, it's a Chash Yisad Reise. The Alter Rebbe comes with a new reason. Alter Rebbe comes and it says like this: oh, is a bishul matzah shen spoileri? According to the problem of matzah shen spoileri, matzah which is grinded, be'emes ki gam she'ain iser gumar ibur in Medina. It's not a clear cut iser Medina. Mekom hamachmer tuvul brucha. V'ayne min amim. It's not ungefragt is machmas. First of all, we see a gewaldige isod over here. There's sometimes chimras which is minam which does make sense, and there's no reason to do it. The Alter Rebbe wants to explain that this minig, this chimra, is not eine minam. So we see there, nishied the chimra is nachmanunam. Akapuna, what is it? Eine minam laima ki chimra blitam eletama rabba ikir bemilsa. It's a gewaldige tam. Lizuar machshash is the reise. Fi asmag verbain yerichem hive bes Yosef kein pusik prichudash. Bekemer shenikle the chashina shemalon bishul shaper. Alter Rebbe comes with a different reason. I am afraid, on top of the matzah, and Alter Rebbe writes, look at the matzahs, and a lot of matzahs you're going to see, there is flour outside. There is flour outside, which we can see it also. Take a matzah, you're going to see it. So the Alter Rebbe, there's a Rishonim in the Prichudish with other which have a chashash. Maybe this flour is not baked well. It's not baked well. Therefore, it's not baked well. You put it into a soup, or then you have a problem. Why? Because chashash is the rice. It's not baked. You put it in the water, then chashash is the rice. We'll get to it. The time is yeah. But my lady Alter Rebbe said, "Vav da maf avlusim v'loy nishliyufa." Imashkus beterazuv de bedeve tsura heine the matzah chida. You don't do das matzah allein nicht wenn man sagen like avlusim the matzah allein. Zug the terazuv. That is the shala. So let me just give a gduma to understand. There's a shala. The translation has a shala when you do in a shala which macht sich in chaburas beiker in the professional matzah you don't have the shala, but in chaburas you have. You make a dough, and then you realize it's too wet. You gave it too much water. So what do you want to do? You want to take another flour and put it together and mix it together. So the translation, don't do that. Don't do that. In such a case, not necessarily the flour will mix together good. Don't do it. What you should do? Make a different dough which is drier. You have two dry, one is a wet one is a dry one. Put it together, make it one big dough. That you can do, but you cannot add amel because it is a problem chashash as it won't get fully baked. Yes, but the Eved zug the terezuv. It's okay, but the Eved zug the terezuv. It zug the Alter Rebbe. If mashkus with terezuv the Eved shura, hayna matzas lechidaye. The matzas you want to eat that matzah is fine. Avalusim b'marak to put it into a soup. Mistapek among avruam. Afile b'de Eved. Afile b'de Eved mistapek. Va'av da masig lahachmer mishim hefseg amatzah by the kemach v'or. V'hucha l'shaychait hama. The Mungavrum says in such a case, which I mentioned in the Sedation, he says he should be machmar. But why? Not in the Rizud. The Rizud Zug David is okay. The Mungavrum says no, you should be machmar. Zug Dal Rebbe, why is the Mungavrum says the machmar? The Mungavrum itself writes that because also the Mungavrum has an issue of the flour which is inside. So what happens? There's a hefsek between the fire and the flour. So therefore it doesn't bake. It's the Mungavrum machmar. Zug Dal Rebbe, the reason why it's machmar is a different reason. And therefore we are afraid maybe this was not baked well, and you put it into water, and it is not a problem. Then he continues, gewaltige Sach. So what is his chemra? His chashash is mishim kemach kuli. You have flour which is baked, and according to some poiska might not be baked well. So that's a different. So in order such a case, in other case, what is the problem? Well, you have a matzah. When you have a matzah, you take a piece of matzah and you put it in the soup. You might have on top flour, then you have a problem. What is if you make kneidlich? You take the whole matzah, you grind it well, you have matzah meal, and then you make it. You have such a problem because even if though something was not fully baked, it is bottle. It's the kemach, it's bottle. So the Alter Rebbe, according to my time, my reason is the first reason which we mentioned because you'll get to a chash zilzil mitzchtoizan. We said it's only when you make flour when a matzah you can dip. Do the Alter Rebbe verkehrt. My chash is only when you have a full matzah. Not when it's matzah meal. Matzah meal I would have agreed that it could be okay. And so the Alter Rebbe, look further. Wenn a Masche kemach shapia matzah lamala lechoire wat nicht darf sein kein Problem. Aber matzah tchine shoyz men agilem jetzt schlutem sind tarivas gets bottle. So the Alter Rebbe some achloikes ashlaravleva oi basvet bottle of svet bottle kemach as I mentioned before. So therefore na mir mach bezan even kneidlich. So according to the Alter Rebbe beitsam the ikrshash is the matzah when it's full, not when it's grinded. So the Alter Rebbe gets some mach bezan a fill of them. In Avdeim, Lamas Avdeim is the Achsidim, the Machmar of the reasons of the Alter Rebbe's Iker Tam, was the Alter Rebbe says, I'm afraid on top might be some flour which is not baked together. Now the Alter Rebbe has a question. Why is this Chimra happen now? The Gedolei Yisrael did not offer this Chimra. 3,000 years we ate matzah in what happened now? Why stand plötzlich Achsidim start doing etwas Frimmigkeiten? Etwas Achshash, maybe something happened. So the Alter Rebbe, he gives us the history. Alter Rebbe writes, and by the way, this whole Shi'ur started b'bais ha-medrsh le-mezrsh ha-magid. The Bashem Tov ate Shi'ur. The mezrsh ha-magid, over there, it started the whole chimra of matzah Shi'ur. The Alter Rebbe asks, why is it like that? And the answer is like this. The Alter Rebbe gives the answer. Zeli esrim shunu v'yoyser, that changed. We changed to do matzahs. How we do matzahs. Till about 300 years ago, we had matzahs which was exactly like the Israeli lafa. Anybody knows what a lafa is? The Israelis know for sure. It's a little bit like a, what is it called today's day? The Nisha Pita. A wrap. Yeah, wrap, but it's aber a lafa. It's like a lafa. That was the matzah all the time till 300 years ago. That's the time in the shmatz. And not only time in the shmatz, there's a Chassidish Ingeman in Eretz Yisrael, which he started making back this kind of matzah. And a Gedolei Yisrael came over against him, and he said, what's the problem? Come to me and give a look how I do it. If I have 80 minutes, alles find a boy. And I heard some Gedolei Yisrael, I heard over whom, went to him and says, ich kann nicht aßen because I see. There's no reason. But sobald Gedolei Yisrael haben sich getan, the last 200 years, we shouldn't do it. But Akaponim, that was the matzah. Till 300 years ago, the matzah was basically a lafa. Taimonim still do it. And now we're going to understand what Hillel did. What did Hillel do? Very simple. He made, what is it called? A shvarma. Hillel made a shvarma. He had mortar, he had meat, had a lafa, nothing fault. That had the matzahs in when you go more and the gesta basara and everything breaks inside. That wasn't the story. It was a lafa, it was fine. So the Alter Rebbe moedig gesagt. So I'll tell you more gesagt. That once upon a time we had matzahs, which was, they used to bake, work on it a long time. I just want to ask if the people want to daven there. I want to just finish it, and anybody wants to daven a little bit later. So the Alter Rebbe, once upon a time, that was the matzah. They used to work on it a long time. Work on it was much more wetter. They used to arbeiten on it. So she the chashash. Sie gewähnt der chashash, the different chashash. Sie gewähnt der chashash of Sharat Shiva. As inside maybe could stay something. That chashash they gewähnt. In the matzah haben wir nicht der chashash. There's no such a thing as innovating is not a problem. And so my Alter Rebbe, but nowadays then we make matzah, thin matzah, we make very fast, and we make it very little water. So you make it fast, so automatically the dough does not get worked out as it should be. So therefore, in the make it fast, therefore inside talk about a problem on top there are flour which stays. In Mamaila, you're asking why the Gedolis rule beforehand did not be machmer on this, because it's only 20 years ago they started switching how the matzah was done, and therefore now we have to start making the chibra. That's why we are machmer. Das der Loschen, was der Luschen wird Alter Rebbe sucht dort. Im Maschel ist Kiris als Apostel. Sucht der Alter Rebbe, why did the Friedige Apostel mention my chashash which I brought up? Heine, mich mit der eine ist eine Motzi, klar. It's not Motzi. Ebe Isa Koshe. You have a heart. Like we, our matzah. This chashash is only in our matzah, which is a hard dough, and it's not good worked out. Before then, or Yeshoyin, Belisha, Gilgul used to work a long time. Achoyin Ilish Yufa. Achamakurov ze Esrim Shuna, till about 20 years, or Yoise, Nispashta Zahira Zibe Yisrul Kedoshim. They changed it because Al Zahiras, because they were afraid that you're working a half an hour on the matzah. Although you're working, it doesn't get chometz, but we still have afraid that maybe you won't, it could become chometz because you didn't work 100%. So therefore, they are machmar to make it very fast. So therefore, and if you go a little bit in history, you're going to see exactly when it started the change of the matzahs, and that was the time of the Alter Rebbe, 20 years ago in the top of the Maggid. That's when the Beshet of the Shmachim again. The Maggid again. The Gedolis Rum, also jemand getauscht the message, Skinim in the Tuition, the Maggid changed, and also jemand getauscht noch andere Sachen, yeah, Skinim in the Tuition, like Shimmer spoke yesterday, Skinim in the Tuition they changed. Wir geworden mehr Frem, Chassidim sind gewesen Eibig, machen wir gewesen, haben sie gehalten. Also, it's a chashash, and therefore, yeah.
If you have flour outside the flour pot, and the match is taken out, it's hot, you get it's going to wet what's there. So you chashash straight away.
Why?
Because of the wetness. When it's taken out, it's always it's hot.
Yeah, it's hot, but the flour on top doesn't reach water. Doesn't reach water. See, don't you minute, it doesn't reach water. But if there is on top some episode, it's a chashash. Maybe not. Now again. To nowadays, I will say, let me make it clear one thing. The time how we do matzah in the Alter Rebbe matzah is also changed. The ovens which we have is about 2,500, 3,000 degrees. Is almost impossible to such happen. As an schweren ugebacken. It's but a kapunam. Chashash ruchag, mit dem Tag, you see, even the Chassidim, except by us, man machen wir auch for noshim, and also for children. Oh, the Rebbe children is only mitzat chinuch. But like a lot of the Chassidische Welt, for women they were not makbet. It's separate keilim. So because then in our days to say that basically something the flour did not become baked is a stretch. But it makes sense. It can happen. So therefore, what? But it's so hot. It takes a second. A second. If you leave it 2 seconds later, it starts burning. I was in a matzah bakery. You know how many matzahs went up in flames? A second. It was seconds because it was in flames. That's why you get some. Yeah. So. Yeah. Be on top. Weil der amulige Matze ist gewesen, eine dickere Matze. So innerlich können bleiben Sachen. In unserer Matze, so geht ausgewältigt, als ein Scheich innenwendig soll werden, so ein schweren Ugebacken. Ein Scheich, what? Kfula. Bechlal, people, ich habe gehabt Sachschalas. People show me a matzah. If there's chitim meshuchim, there's no such a thing as chitim meshuchim by our matzahs. Geendigt. Ein der Marke say. There's no such a thing. Chitim meshuchim was lafa. Chitim meshuchim was too, it wasn't baked. Eins der matzahs is no such a thing as chitim meshuchim. Weil oben ist es nicht ausgemischt. Oben liegt es am Tab. Ja, ich habe es reingelegt, ich habe es nicht gelassen, genick ausgebacken. Ich habe gemeint, es ist gewonnen ausgebacken. Hinten riecht es so der heiße, der Sach. Alter, aber so machen wir. Also, sucht das so. Als Biker ist, allein sucht das. Als Beizem. Aber Akapuna, von dort hat sich umgegeben der Chimra, oft to have Matzah Sharia, von Machsidam. And the meaning became, and it's interesting, the Alter Rebbe had a Talmud which is called the Bitzchik Azik B'Vitebsk, and there's a Ksaviat from him published in the Yagdal Torah, and he writes, the Kach, hoye darkem sharabasaini b'mezrich, again, also this is geworden, that sich umgegeben in Mezrich, sho in Izurim aleichem achula matzah tchine kneidlach, ichadoima, but what did they do? Interesting. Wo yo oifen matzah megrika, v'koitchen las men kneidlach v'chremslach. Very interesting thing, which I'm not going to go in, it's a different subject, that's do in kidneys. Could you take flour from soy flour? Could you take anything flour, kidneys? Corn flour, and make the fin matzah, make the fin kneidlich. Now, if you watch it 80 minutes, all these things, could you do it or you cannot do it? But Pasha would say, what's the big deal?
It's not going to be worse than
It's not bit, and that's where the chita, exactly. It will not be the chita. Yes, what's the problem? And this is how they used to do it. The beginning of Hasidim used to do this. This is, ich habe mal gewesen in other Ma'amar Kitnias. The Hasidim used to do it. They used to make a flour from Kitnias, and they used to watch it as if it is like 80 minutes. And do zoekt er bitzig mit Vitebsk. So you always see matzah megrika, this is the Kitnias. The kotchen always the last man kneidlich v'chremslach, and that was the kneidlich v'chremslach. Now we don't do it anymore. There's no such a thing today's day that we should be Michael Kitnias even when you wash it. It's going erge v'chita in a way. It's going erge v'chita. That means after that Litvisha was a es yok kneidlich, after Pekin, they were not going to make from Kitnias because Kitnias is off limits. Das darf man gedenken. Now, this is Pashas Chasidim, this is geworden Sharia, but I want to say it's not only the Chasidim. Eventually, it came in also to other places. First of all, we know the Yisad V'Shorish Avoida. He was in the times of the Medrash Magid. He came to the Medrash Magid famous, and the Medrash Magid didn't want to take him as a Talmud. Him writes clearly that he was Machmer also of Sharia. The Maramash was Ashkenaz Sharuf, stated the children write that he didn't need Sharia. And it's interesting, what?
I said Eisenstadt.
Maramash Eisenstadt. Yeah, Maramash Eisenstadt. And the Mishnah Berurah, although he paskens the Semitter, he writes, V'yesh anshai maaseh shemachmir an atzmam, v'ayin shoyre v'ayin mavash li matzah b'paiseh v'mechshash she'amanisher kaimech b'toch hamatzahs. He brings the time of the Shara Tshiva, b'toch hamatzahs, she'anil l'shufa, v'alada yeshri is chamatz. Aber in his son, he has his Zechronis from his, the son writes, my father did not eat shrua. And they used to ask him, why don't you eat shrua? The Vilna grew, the grew ate shrua. Why didn't you eat shrua? He says, bring me a matzah from the Vilna and then I'll eat it. Such a man, As long as I don't have the matzah of Vilna then. And it was Machmer even Achar Shapais, it was B'chsidim in Michael, but most of B'chsidim, Rebbe Kekille, the Mishabira Machmer, Philip Achar Shapais, Getrach Machmer. Akapunam, das is the Nekidus Advurim fin dos. Now, what's doing with my pirates? Can you, skip a lot of things, but the time is very short. But Akapunam, what do you do with my pirates? Can you take matzah and dip it in milk, dip it in wine, dip it in orange juice, in natural orange juice? I'm not talking orange juice which is from concentrated. Can you do this or not? Zug the Alter Rebbe, look in the chief of the Alter Rebbe, which the Alter Rebbe wrote, which I brought. Iba my pirates, the Alter Rebbe pshita, na ein lach mer klal kol pesach. Zug the Alter Rebbe. My pirates, you shouldn't be machmer. And this is also how the Shara Tshiva, and his chashash, which he has a different chashash also, zug val kapurim nere, af a machmer ma haitama, ein zurich lachmer, in me kolchken le tabel betoch yain, and my pirates, there's no problem. And that was the minig used to be the minig by a lot of Hasidim. The Butchucheruf, which is the Talmud of Kiddush's Leivi, the famous Butchucheruf Aishel Avrum, which is one of the Mefarshim in Shechanurach, he writes that the minig Amadagdikim is that you don't make Shirua only in my Pyrus. And therefore, in my Pyrus, and from over here we see what we said, what the Friedige Rebbe writes, that the Rebbe Rishmusai, the Rebbe Rishab, ate matzah shmira im yayin, oy chulav, if it was watched, there shouldn't be any water. Today's day, it's very hard. There's a tshuva for Rav Osner Urva Shulam, to the Puparuf, the today's Puparuf. He was the Bal Machshir on Golem Flow years ago, and he asks him about this question, and Zut Lamasa is not, in Matthias, it's not our milks, all of them, we don't not necessarily put in water, but we don't clean we clean the machines, and we don't dry it out. Yeah, we have over here, where is our lipshus? Yeah, we don't dry out we don't have a shmat and dry it out. So although you clean it, and alles fine avoid, it's not, so always is do achshash mime, and we know, the halacha is, my pyrus in mime is even worse than mime itself. It's much more. So therefore, so b'mayla, today's day, Lamasa, aber today's day, Ribeke Killer for Chassidim, today's day will not do it, only taka on food which you know didn't have any avocado, there will be machma. But a lot of Chassidim will not even avocado, and even on other things, we're not doing it. Now that, what?
Why can't you have avocado?
Because you wash it, and okay. There is who washes avocado? There's a lot of it washing. Yeah, what? Oh, if you make it dry, yeah. Nachman, of them zoek er. Ik zoek dus de Matthias. Okay, man, okay. Fine, okay. No, Nachman. Kol achad maashe. The Matthias is sistake nicht. Again, he's right. Mitzad halucha, there's no reason. The only reason is because people are afraid things which we don't know what came across water. That's the only reason. We don't came across. In Taketomer einer machmer gewein. What?
And there is no chumra, there is a schlechte chumra.
Yeah, Pesach, there's no chumra, there's a schlechte chumra. But you're right. In Ikradin, my Pesach is machmetz. And therefore, a Tomer Amensh tak machmet gewein, is it watching of them? And a person does not wash avocado. Yeah, okay. No. His minig, you don't want to change his minig. You make Shalom Bayis problem. Achrish Pesach, we are not machmer. Let me make it clear. There's a misconception, I don't know from where it comes. In the Polish world, there's a saying, and I have no idea from where it comes. 40 years I'm fighting with this. The Rebbe has all the time of the reasons why you should. Not only you are it's mutter. That Rebbe writes, Achrish Pesach is mutter. And the Rebbe writes, you should, Achrish Pesach, and every machel, Achrish Pesach, op nicht machen gehen, verkehrt ich nach innen zu machen, Sharia, immer nicht machen gehen auf the Kailem next year. Du hast mir auch gedenken? Some Rebbes are machen gehen, they didn't make Sharia only in separate Kailem, which you didn't use next year, or in a Iber-Yur. You shouldn't be better. But by us, in Chabad, hat man genießt the Kailem, man ist gegangen also Ivat, and therefore, so Indian, favus the Indian given als achtes Yisroel, als the Rebbe Rashab als bachtes. There are a lot of reasons why Achrish Pesach machmer. One of the reasons is du atam. The Rebbe sagt doch der Geschmack reason why, because me kimt from Pesach bis also wie me kimt von Yontif gibt rein Chol ist du Isra Chag ist auch me geht von Pesach heran zu Schwiez, man mis essen kommen von Pesach mit tun ist, hat man einen mitten, was ist so an der borderline, nicht stehen. Akaponam. Oh, aber Achrish Pesach ist nur der Rabbuna. So, bei Meile hat man es, einer von den Tamen ist als Achrish Yisroel, mit so was als alle anderen Jiden, sie haben Essen gebrockt, sind nicht kein Goyim Gemirem. Der alte Rebbe writes, Mishim Simchas Yontif. Der alte Rebbe writes, Ha-Michael, Mishim Simchas Yontif. Der alte Rebbe geht a Hette. Ha-Michael, Mishim Simchas Yontif. I am giving yeah, it's a Michael. Was nur der Rabbuna, but mine is a Michael. Aber the Rebbe in the older time which I gave is nicht a time that you should be Michael or Simchas Yontif, nor a time that you should do it als Rachnis de Genyuna. Al kapunem die Jure, so man Achrish Pesach schon zahnen in Schleim in the Kodesh. We won't have second days, only one day. Was zahnen wie man solche sagen, in so mit dem zahnen in Schleim in the Kodesh, beim Heide wie meine Mamash. Benissen egali, benissen asin legul, schön.